with a good friend of mine. But of course, in almost anything we do, we need some money. And this afternoon, I have on with us the Honorable Mark A. Douglas. He is an attorney. He also represents us in the public spectrum as an elected official in the city of Sunrise. Served as vice mayor. I think he might still be at vice mayor again, but he's been there for a number of years and gotten quite a bit of things done as an elected official in the city, but he also, in his own right, as an attorney, he does quite a number of things also. So, welcome, city commissioner, vice mayor, attorney at law, Douglas. How are you this afternoon, sir?
Good afternoon, Mr. Dale Holness, Mayor forever, Broward County. Good afternoon to the listeners of WZPP, Mike to Mike and all his crew. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I am the deputy mayor, not vice. You know, in Miami, vice has a certain connotation to it.
Okay, deputy mayor. I mean, in other cities they use vice, but you're right. It's deputy mayor of the city of Sunrise, and I know you've been there quite a while. I know it was a bit of a journey to get there. You worked hard. You knocked on a lot of doors. Grateful to have been out there with you to get someone of your caliber, of your excellence in public service. Someone who is smart enough to move a system that often doesn't move easily. So I know you've been on this radio station before, but I want to give you a chance, Deputy Mayor Douglas, to talk a little bit about you and your roots, where you're born, where you went to school, and that kind of stuff. Would you take a few minutes to do that so that people get to know beyond just being an attorney and an elected official who you are?
Well, thank you, and it's great to be able to join you and to share a little bit about myself. I'm Jamaican, not just a pseudo Jamaican, but born and bred. I was educated in a little all-age school in North Clarendon, which is where I grew up in an area called Kellis. Attended Clarendon and yes, and I attended Clarendon College, and like the many people who passed what was then known as the Common Entrance. So I grew up in rural Jamaica, and like many of us, we leave the countryside and go to the metropolis to further opportunities. And so I went to the University of the West Indies. They have a School of Continuing Studies, which is sort of like a community college. It allows you to matriculate for a degree. And after having done that for 2 years, I went to the UTEC, what is formerly known as CAST. It was transitioning to a university at the time. It was College of Science and Technology. Yeah. And I did a degree in business. All the time while working there, I was in IT as an IT systems engineer, sort of a dual path, working in the IT industry while doing a business degree. So that's where I did my tertiary education and graduated in the year 2000 with a bachelor's in business administration. And it wasn't long after that I, like many of our families and friends, migrated to the United States approximately December of 2001. I was at the ripe old age of 25. First, I got on plane.
The ripe old age. So you probably got a little nervous or what going on, right?
Well, so it lays in context. I really had not had much experience except, what we see on TV with the United States prior to that time. So I came to South Florida, and like many immigrants, the immigrant story, you kind of land where your family members are.
Mhm.
So, I ended up in Sunrise, Florida, and you land in this place and you see all these big buildings and large highways, and you wonder how you're ever going to fit into this whole scheme of things. It looks all so grand. So that was my path to the United States at 25. And so having arrived, I saw all the bright lights and all the flashy cars and everything else that could seduce a young man, but I decided to jump right away into preparing for law school, which was a goal I had as a young man, to be a lawyer. My grandmother would ask, "What do you want to be?" And I said, "I want to be a lawyer and a barrister." It is what we called it back then in Jamaica, in the old British system.
Mhm.
So I came and I did what they call the LSAT, which is a law school admission test.
Mhm.
I arrived at the end of 2001, as I mentioned before. So the year 2002 was about here. Grand Market, the year 2001, I arrived in the U.S. which I had stayed in Jamaica. Which I had stayed in Jamaica for Christmas, because I came to find out Christmas wasn't much here in the U.S. So I was like, boy, I should have stayed. But I arrived, I was excited, I was nervous. It looked all so big, but I embarked on that preparation, and by the following June, this was after 9/11, of course, a lot of uncertainties in the economy, a lot of uncertainties in the space, but because I had worked in information technology in Jamaica, I worked at the University of Technology where I was studying, so I came with some technical skills, and I was able to gain employment. And so I got into an IT job, and at the same time I was preparing for law school. And by the June of 2002, I had completed the LSAT and started to apply for law schools. And the following year, in 2003, I entered law school at FIU. It was their second cohort of students, because they had just started that law school. So I jumped right in.
I know it's ranked as one of the top law schools in the state.
Indeed it is, and for years it has carried the highest bar passage rates. Even
the cost is pretty low too, like $21,000 a year. My daughter Dayla is actually considering that. She's doing her LSAT actually tomorrow.
Well, good for her. It's a great option. Being a lawyer is one of the good things you can do with your life. But I jumped in. Yes, the public school fees. The fees are set by the legislature. So whether you're in South Florida or you're in North Florida, UF, it's always going to be the same. And the other options were UM, of course, and NOVA. And so when FIU came about, many people, because it was not initially accredited as a new school, would not be. Some people did not want to take a chance, but I took a chance, and it was a very great decision for me at that time. But I went in, I got a great education. I worked part-time and went to school part-time. And I graduated in 3 years, just like a full-time student, because I put in the extra effort and graduated law school in 2006. And so I was a man in a hurry.
You're touching something about money, and we're going to come back to the rest of your journey. But while you're here, there are a lot of people who actually go to these private schools that cost them so much money as compared to a state college or university that costs so much less, and then they end up with overwhelming burden of debt,
student
loans, and oftentimes it just buries them. Whereas if they went to one of these other schools, they could probably get through at much less lower cost. Your thoughts on that?
That is absolutely true, and we see the debate about student loans today. Nationally, a lot of people they go for the name cachet and what they believe it will do for them in terms of connections and in terms of just getting them through the door. But one has to remember that only you can learn for yourself, and school is really there to facilitate your learning. But so once you're in a structured environment with a structured curriculum, and you have a desire you're going to go through that material, and you're going to have to be the one to absorb the material. And I think if you have a school that is properly structured, and especially if it's already accredited, it would have created an environment for them to give you that accreditation. I think one can learn anywhere, really. And I think we have to look past the name and the cachet that it gives and look more to the practical aspects of learning. And, the C student and the A student comes in the same boat. But everybody can't get A. And at the end of the day, once you have passed the bar exam, nobody even asks you again, really, unless you're in high-level corporate law, which nobody cares. After a few years, nobody cares what school you went to and all that. So, I think people have to be more mindful of how they invest in colleges and so on, and whether that extra money is even worth what you get from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you now finished law school, and what was your next step?
Well, I applied for one job because I was hell-bent on not necessarily working for others, but I needed to continue my learning, and I applied to be a prosecutor in Miami. When I was in law school, I was a certified legal intern, which allows you to work much like a lawyer, but under the supervision of a licensed attorney. So I was a certified legal intern at the state attorney's office in Miami, and I liked it. And so when I finished law school, I applied for a job there, and I got the job. And so that I went into another training ground, because there at the prosecution office, for example, when they hire you for 6 weeks, you're in a classroom environment, and you have senior prosecutors who have done some of the most significant prosecution in this country, really, because Miami is known for that, teaching you everything they know in a classroom setting, 8 hours a day for 6 weeks. And that's the environment in which I started my actual legal practice. It was also a learning environment. And after that, they throw you into the courtroom to prosecute cases, starting out with, misdemeanors, DUI, that kind of thing. But that is where I started my practice. And after cutting my teeth there for some time, doing significant felonies and all kinds of cases, I went out on my own. And I've been doing that ever since.
Okay.
Practicing law in the local community.
All right. So I heard that at the state attorney's and the public defender's office, there's a tremendous amount of learning because you cover a broad amount of cases, but the pay is low and there's a lot of work. Is that did that bear true for you at the state attorney's office?
That is absolutely true, and that has not changed much when you consider inflation. When I started there, I was making $38,000 a year. Having worked before, I was making more than that, when I was working in IT. Mm-hmm. So I found that while I did not have an inherent desire to continue working for others, I loved public service. I loved doing the work I was doing there as a prosecutor, not only because I was prosecuting people, because as a prosecutor, you're known to be a justice minister, to see to it that justice is done, and you have an opportunity to help those who ought not to have been charged, or who. I told a public defender once that I've let more people go than you could ever do, because I can assess because you can assess the cases, and those that lack merit, you can review them and make justice happen. But in any event, those who are deserving of prosecution and the full weight of the law do get it. But I loved public service, but I couldn't afford it.
So
talking about money, I had a family, and I could not afford to remain as a prosecutor for as long as I probably would have remained.
So on that note, you talked about some stuff here that you do have some discretion as a prosecutor.
Absolutely.
And it leads me to uh, yesterday the removal of the state attorney in Orange County,
Uh-huh.
Monique Worrell, because it seems she might have exercised some of that judgment. Uh, that the governor just arbitrarily removed her, even though she won her seat uh, in 2020 with 65% of the people voting for her.
Right.
So if he's going to remove her, I mean, he could probably try and fire a whole host of people down the line.
Well, I am not an expert when it comes to those things, but it's sort of a nuanced view because we've seen it before where other prosecutors were removed for being derelict, who may have said they're not going to prosecute at all a certain type of case.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw the discussion surrounding that and the nuances that were drawn in that you can exercise your discretion on a case-by-case basis, which every prosecutor ought to do. But where you have made a decision not to prosecute blanket-wide a particular type of case, that may be deemed to be a dereliction of your duty to apply on a case-by-case basis that discretion. Like if you just come out and say, I'm not going to prosecute anybody who has been charged for X, or I'm not going to prosecute anybody who has been charged for Y, or I'm not going to apply the death penalty, which is the law of the state, then it may allow for the governor to come in and charge malfeasance or misfeasance or some sort of a abandonment of your obligations under the Constitution and under the laws of the state, which you are charged to follow. So yes, you can look at a particular defendant and the particular facts surrounding that case and apply your discretion on a case-by-case basis. Any prosecutor.
But it doesn't seem as though that was the issue from what I've read. I mean, maybe there's something else that I don't know, but
I don't know enough to get beyond, a general, statement on that to weigh in on what the governor and of course we're subject to the rule of law. I'm sure she'll be able to get her day in court and have the courts review that decision.
But that goes back to the judges that are selected and put in place. It seems that we've gotten so political because in all the years I've lived here, I really haven't seen prior to now a governor removing people from elected office based on those grounds. I haven't. I mean, I maybe you missed me somewhere.
We're in the business of politics.
Huh?
We're in the business of politics, so we have to expect politics to be part of the. It's funny to hear people say, well, we're exercising politics and it's politics, but these are politicians.
and one of the things that I learned in the past is the thousands of positions that a governor has at his discretion to appoint people to the college board. So the University of Florida, Florida State University, FAMU, Broward College, FIU, FAU. He basically selects who the board of directors are. The hospital districts. There's a lot of power that a governor have, and those positions that I just mentioned usually have huge budgets, billions and billions of dollars. That if he puts the people in, then what happens? They're going to spend the money amongst or set the procurement process up as they see benefits their friends and their people more so than others. And that's something that when people vote, they need to understand that you need to be mindful of that also. So often we don't look beyond the politics and the power of politics to control the purse, the money. So the power of the politics and the purse, the money, is not separated, and we need to be more aware of that, I believe, as we go forward. we so you're in business. What we're going to do in a couple of minutes is to talk about your ascension then to an elected office. But let me take a break now and have you give information as to how people may contact you. If someone wanted to reach out to you and need some legal help or counsel, how do they reach you, Attorney Mark Douglas, Deputy Mayor?
Well, I've been practicing in the local community, the Tri-County region, you could say. I started my practice in Miami, and I'm now located primarily in Broward. My office is in Lauderhill, actually. My phone number, my office is 954-730-8393. I can be reached by email at Mark, M-A-R-K, at Mark Douglas Law. That's my first name, my last name, law.com.
I
And
repeat,
that number again is 954-730-8393.
and the email address one more time.
Mark, M-A-R-K, at markdouglaslaw.com.
Okay.
And it's to note, obviously, I've been practicing in the local community, and as an immigrant, I practice in areas that touches upon the lives of our community. So I do immigration, deportation defense, criminal defense, which is my original.
So we're gonna go to a break, and when we get back, we'll have you give that information again.
You're listening to WZOP 92.7 LP FM.
We're not the airlines, but we can take you to the islands every Sunday at Island Vibe Sunday at Blue Martini in the Galleria Mall. Enjoy happy hour from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m. Enjoy live reggae music. The Visions Band.
Welcome back to WZPP 96.1 FM and 92.7 FM. We're speaking to former Broward County Mayor Dale Holness and Deputy Mayor
of the city of Sunrise, Mark Douglas. Welcome back to everyone. You know, we have to pay the bills. So we do need the advertising dollars to get the word out. This is the voice of the Caribbean, certainly. We have great coverage throughout the state of Florida. But one of the things I want to ensure our listeners are doing is to download the app so you can take us wherever you go in the world. You can do so by going to WZPP.com, WZPPradio.com.
Yeah, radio.com, yes.
WZPPradio.com, WZPPradio.com. So you can listen to us on your phone, on your iPad, on your laptop. Wherever you go, you have a chance to listen in. Call your friends, tell your friends that we're about informing, educating, entertaining, and empowering our community. With us this afternoon, we have a friend of mine, Attorney Mark A. Douglas, Deputy Mayor of the city of Sunrise. And while we're just before we took the break, Attorney Douglas, you're talking about some of the areas that you specialize in as an attorney. You may continue with that, and then you'll give the contact information one more time. And then we're going to get into your public service as a public servant of the people in the city of Sunrise. So go ahead and tell us about the different areas that you work in as an attorney.
Yes, Mr. Holness, my good friend. My practice over the last 17 years has involved a lot of things. Some of it has no labels, actually, because sometimes problems come with no labels. It really is just a problem. But I've focused from, being a prosecutor, I've focused on criminal defense at both the state and federal level. I practice in all three of the federal districts here in Florida and throughout the state of Florida and the state courts, everything from murder on down. The most significant of cases, drugs and, sexual related matters and fraud, you name it. I also deal with immigration. That is something that touches on the lives of our
citizen. So having your citizenship, I think, is a great thing, and you do that in your practice also, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And deportation defense, which oftentimes juxtaposes very closely with the criminal world. A lot of people who are here, whether they're, in fact, even some of those who are permanent residents, you can still be deported. And I've had to represent a number of people who maybe got in trouble and they were permanent residents. And we have to be careful how we resolve the criminal cases that come before us in an effort to reduce or minimize the immigration impact. So we have to be thoughtful about how we are dealing with the criminal cases. And I've had to deal with those where I wasn't their criminal defense attorney, but years prior, they may have had an attorney who did not focus so much on the impacts, the immigration impacts, because they're not from our community and it wasn't in the forefront of their mind. But then we have to resolve the issues that then arise and going to immigration courts and apply for various waivers and various other relief from deportation. So we have done significant work in the area of immigration, family-based immigration, deportation defense, personal injuries. Those are areas in which I have practiced over the last 17 years, and I've been serving the community through that time.
So one of the things I didn't mention in the benefits of being a citizen is after you become a citizen, you can't be deported unless you fraudulently obtain your citizenship.
That is correct.
So that's a huge reason why.
And that's still within 10 years. In fact, even where there's fraud at the inception, where it generally would be considered void ab initio, that's a Latin word to say it's void at the inception, it has to have occurred within the last 10 years. So if they have not discovered this fraud within the 10 years, then you're a citizen, and unless you voluntarily give up your citizenship, you cannot be deported. And that's another important reason to get citizenship in this country.
Okay, Jeffrey, I have a question on that. Go ahead,
Deputy Mayor, I ask this question. You're saying that if a person committed a crime, a fraud,
in obtaining their citizenship.
In obtaining citizenship within the last 10 years, they can't be deported?
Usually that fraud would have to be discovered within 10 years of you gaining the citizenship.
Okay.
If it is discovered within a 10-year period, it can take action. So it's sort of like a statute of limitation, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
But remember, and I caution people, whether it is that you're gaining an initial benefit or citizenship, it is important to disclose all matters, including when you are getting a visa at the embassy, because I've seen many people that are placed in removal when they arrive at the airport, and this is something we see very often. They came to the U.S., they spend 5 months or the 6 months that they're granted, and they're coming back for a subsequent trip, and they stop them and say, "What did you do here the last 6 months? Why were you here so long?" And they press them into admitting that, maybe they babysat for somebody, or maybe they were staying with their sister's child or whatnot. And the further questioning disclosed, well, she gave me money to shop when I was going back or whatnot. And what I have seen is that they have then determined that at the point you were getting your visa at the embassy, it wasn't a visa to visit or as a tourist, but it was a visa to work. Your intent was to work, and therefore the visa you were granted was based upon fraud. So it's void at its inception.
Oh, Lord.
Because they're saying if you had told us you're coming to work, we'd have told you need a different kind of visa. So because your intent was to work, we are considering your visa void, and therefore the visa you're trying to come in with now is not a good visa. And so you're deported right there at the border. Sent right back.
So if you have family members, you have to. That's real information that people need to know and share with their family members. Go ahead and give us your contact information again if someone wants to reach you to utilize your service, Deputy Mayor, Attorney Douglas.
954-730-8393.
Repeat that again slowly.
954-730-8393.
And your email and website?
mark@markdouglaslaw.com. And of course, the website address is www.markdouglaslaw.com.
Okay, so now let's talk about your election to public service. Why did you get into public service? What was your reasoning?
Well, I almost feel like it was something that was thrust upon me. When I was in Jamaica before I came here, I was the union president at the UTEC where I worked, president of the union as a young man.
And that is where the politics start from, you know.
Yes.
It seemed a natural inclination, and I came here not necessarily with an intent to enter representational politics here in the United States, but I think those of us who have developed a capacity and certain experience ought to offer ourselves. And so when I arrived in Sunrise, I became a lawyer, and I was looking around. I was a part of my condo association, and I bought a second property, and I realized they weren't managing it well, and I again volunteered to be a part of that association, and I realized you could do a lot of things to help when you have certain skills and certain things. And then I was looking for other things, how to help. I went and I applied to be on the city advisory board, and I served on one. Then I chaired another. For I first served on the economic development advisory board at the city of Sunrise. The mayor then appointed me to the bicycle and pedestrian advisory board, which I became the chairman. It was a newly constituted board, and the group voted me to chair it. And in that 2-year period, we came up with a master plan that was accepted by the commission as the template for deploying bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure throughout the city. And then I was asked to sit on the board of adjustment, which is a body that reviews applications for zoning changes and special exceptions when developers want to change the zoning on land and so on. So I was serving in these many capacities, and in fact, you were Broward County Commissioner, and you appointed me also to the Broward County Consumer Protection Board.
Right.
Thank you for that confidence that you placed in me. So there were several ways in which I was serving the community, and because these are all part of the government, it's just a different role.
Exactly.
And
I'm going to have you pause for a moment here, because as I've been in the public service business for a long time, many years as an elected official, but folks ought to know, and then people come to me, I want to run for office. I says, what have you done? What service have you rendered to a nonprofit, to your city, to any entity? No, I haven't done that, but I'm a lawyer. I graduated summa cum laude, or I'm very intelligent, but they have not been engaged in the community. And I says, why are you running? Well, I think I can do a good job. What does that mean? Okay. It's different than where Deputy Mayor Douglas came in.
Yes.
Because I believe that if you're going to look to serve, you should, in public elected office, it should be a continuation of service that you've already been doing.
There you go.
In order to do that. And before I first got elected in Lauderhill, I mean, I had a whole huge resume of involvement in different community organizations,
non-profit organizations,
and stuff that I did in the city to be a part of the city council, affordable housing, and many other entities that were within the cities to help the city. So when you have someone who's running for office that can articulate, as Deputy Mayor Douglas has just done, what their service have been to the community, working as on the condominium board. Condominiums and homeowners association are like a little municipality.
Yes.
Because they have a budget, they have issues that they face in doing different things that needs to be done. And you're volunteering and giving of your time. So you got elected. You ran for office. Tell us a little bit about the experience. We have about 10 minutes left. We're going to focus pretty much on your public service as we go through the rest of this. So tell us your experience of running for office and then in office.
Well, I spoke to the fact that those of us who develop capacities have our obligation to offer ourselves. And when I found out in the city of Sunrise after 55 years of being incorporated as a city, that there had not been a minority that had been ever elected or to have been appointed, to have been served in the city. And I felt a little bit of embarrassment about that, because in 2010, I ran in 2016, but in 2010, the census confirmed a fact, and that was that Sunrise had become a majority minority community. So the majority of people living in Sunrise, 35% African Americans or blacks, Hispanics, and 10% call themselves others, but Caucasians don't call themselves others. So we're talking about mixed race people, Indians, you name it. So the majority of people in the city were minorities, yet not one minority had ever sat at the table to help to determine some of the things that were affecting the community and the members of the community. And so I felt, as somebody who had served on a number of boards, I was the president of the Condo Association, I had developed all these different skills, and certainly my professional training and experience, that I had an obligation to offer myself. And so in 2016, I set forward. I had never worked on an election campaign. I had never, even, so I didn't know what I was doing. I was selling records out of my car trunk. I remember coming to see you, and I showed you a flyer that I had created with the same information on the back that was on the front. I could see the giggle. You never giggle, but I could see the giggle because you said, all right, why don't you put something different on that side? So I started out as ground zero, not knowing what I was doing. And I have to tell the community that you were very instrumental in assisting me in terms of advice and guidance. But I had to go out there and do the work. And I started, as I said, almost like selling records out of your car trunk, because before anybody believes in you, you have to believe in yourself.
Yes. Indeed.
I didn't have a lot of money. I couldn't hire a campaign manager. I remember everybody asking me, who's your campaign manager? And I said, well, it appears that you can only win with a campaign manager. What is going on? But I was managing my own campaign. And, the things started to fall into place, though, because as I gained traction, people were excited about seeing a black person stepping forward. I was articulating a new vision for representation of a broad-based, dynamic community. And there were three individuals, two white persons and myself, one of them having received the endorsement of the firefighters, the police union, the general staff, all the congressmen, even Alcee Hastings endorsed one of the individuals. Every other county commissioner, you name it. I got your endorsement, thank you.
Yes.
But despite that, I offered myself to the community, and there are 32 voting precincts in Sunrise. I won in every single one of them.
Yes.
And I got 8,000 more votes than the other two people combined. The community endorsed me resoundingly, and I'm grateful.
So
so I was the first. I was the first minority elected in Sunrise in 2016.
So once you got there, some of the issues that you face, and I remember you and I talking about the underrepresentation in the fire department, and when we had some early meetings on that and how we helped to change that, and the fact that the eastern portion of the city that was predominantly black wasn't receiving the kind of attention and support for infrastructure and other things, and there were so many other issues that because of your lived experience you were able to bring to the table. Tell us a little bit about that and how you've worked to change that.
Well, the underrepresentation, it starts at the top, because there was never a minority at the leadership level. And leadership, there was nobody in the room when the strategies were being developed, when the solutions were being discussed. And so you'll find that in a fire department with 170 plus personnel, only 4 were black. In a police department that had almost 200 men and women, only 8 were black.
Wow.
There wasn't even a black sergeant. There was never a black lieutenant. In the city administration, there were 53 people designated as senior management executive. Not one of them was black. This is the Sunrise that I went into. And as you can imagine, when I arrived, I was the guy with a horn in the forehead and 10 fingers on each hand.
and a Jamaican.
and a third world country guy coming in here to tell us what to do. So I can't say I was happily received. Certainly, You were looked upon with suspicion. Some people were fearful. Some people looked at you with derision. There was a lot of emotions, and you felt sort of alone, and you were told you can't do anything here. You're outnumbered. You're different, and But I had a job to do, and you spoke about the lack of investment in the eastern part of Sunrise, which was the historic part of Sunrise. The infrastructure was older and needed redevelopment. And I can tell you, by being in that room and being able to advocate for those who previously did not have a voice, since then we've brought over $30 million in investment into East Sunrise. We've built new parks. We have reinvested in Rock Hall and Village Beach Club. We have rehabilitated those. We have a $3 million arts plaza under development right now. We have bought derelict buildings and torn them down. The old gas station in the back there. We've done so much. Bring water facilities underground. In terms of the diversity, our deputy chief right now of police is a black man.
Mm-hmm.
We have lieutenants and majors who are black.
Mm-hmm.
We have almost 4 times the amount of black police officers, men and women, and other minorities in the police department since I got there 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
It's the same as, to a lesser extent, in the fire department, which is a little different because
Tougher
the way
to break in.
it's tougher because of the nature of the training. They have to be paramedic firefighters, and they have to invest in their own education. The police will send you to the academy.
Mm-hmm.
With the fire, you have to be a paramedic firefighter, and it's something you have to do on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of minorities don't have the resources. They're first generation.
Mm-hmm.
So they come to the table, and it's difficult for them. So the pool is from which to get more minority candidates is a little different. So it's tougher. But we have been engaging. One of the great things about Sunrise's government structure is that our fire chief and our police chief are what we call charter officers. We are the only city in Broward County that does that. It means they report directly to the commission. So you have your hands on the knob.
Absolutely.
You can make them accountable to you for the results. You can make them accountable to you for what they're doing in the department and how they're working to diversify and making sure the community reflects that those who work for the community reflect the community and hold them accountable. And that is important. So that representation has resulted in significant shift in Sunrise in terms of public investment and in terms of making sure our staff that are serving the community reflect and represent the diverse community that we are.
So we have only about a minute and a half left to go. So I'm going to be quick here. You are up for re-election next year. And have you opened your account yet? And if people are going to support you, how do they do so? And whatever else you want to take about 1 minute to cover.
Well, I think it's incumbent on people to understand that your municipal government is the government closest to you. It's the government that delivers the services that you come to rely on each and every day. Your water, your public utilities, your police, the way your police deal with you, and so on. So it's important to pay attention to those elections and to support your candidates. And certainly I will be up for re-election. I have not opened an account because I'm considering my options in terms of what I do next year in Sunrise. But
could one of those consideration be maybe the mayor?
Well, Holness, I'm not going to call it today, but I certainly believe
my friend, we're going to stay tuned.
Listening to WZOP 92.7 LP FM.
We're not the airline.